Hi, I'm Steve Curry. I'm Chief Exec of Harlington Hospice, which is in West London, right next to Heathrow Airport. And I'm here with Sally Chandler, who's Chief Exec of Hillingdon Carers.
Hi.
And we're here to share some information about the joint work we've been doing in Hillingdon and the experience we've had in terms of setting up H4All, which is a joint venture with our two organisations, but also Age UK Hillingdon, Hillingdon Mind and DASH, which is our local disability organisation.
So Hillingdon Carers is obviously a carer support organisation. We support carers of all ages from 5 to 105. And we're one of the 5 sovereign charities as Steve described. So I'm here today to talk about the benefits really that the joint working with the hospice has provided for us as an organisation.
Okay. We sort of started this work in earnest probably 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And it sort of evolved out of a joint piece of work that the other 4 charities were doing. Because H4All has got a number 4 in it, and that was for the 4 charities. Hospice, we actually joined later down on the road, and I had to. I was new into post, and I knocked on the doors and got to know my colleagues at that point in time. And it was out of that we actually started to look at what do we want to do, really, etc. In terms of what advantages we've got out of this, in terms of how we've, because it has been a lot of work. I mean, one of the things I have to say is that any partnership, if it's going to work, you need to invest a lot of time into it. And the building of that trust and getting to know each other's strengths and weaknesses is
very critical, I think, to the success.
Yeah. One of the things we do get out of it is, for anybody who's a chief exec of a charity, they tend to be very lonely and isolated roles. Yeah. And this is the first time I've actually got a group of colleagues who actually understand what I'm going through. And Sally will attest as well. We've got to know each other, and we work collaboratively and we play to our strengths. So my writing is terrible, but Sally's is fantastic. So in terms of any bids we're putting together, Sally put the bids in. My strength is much more around the sort of financial of it and some strategic sort of thinking.
And we have other chief execs, one that can consume volumes of information. She has a mental highlighter and just it saves us all reading every document that comes out. Yeah. So we all bring different strengths to the table. But what it's enabled us to do really is better align our services. So there is now no duplication. We're not treading on each other's toes. And we've kind of been able to push more resource to the front line. So part of the reason for coming together was looking at how we could share backroom services. We have a shared finance service. We've merged 3 counselling services under one management and supervision structure. And we've also combined our buying power. So we've been able to secure support contracts like IT, audit, those sorts of things, much more cheaply by combining that. I think the other thing is about removal of local competition, Steve.
Yes, I mean, one of the major drivers for us to work strategically together, working with both health and social services. From the hospice point of view, we were facing much more to the health side of things, and the other 4 charities were much more focused towards social care and local authority. But working together, we've actually provided a bridge to each other to go through that. So when we were looking for funding from social services, because we already had the alliance with the other partners, it really opened those doors a lot easier for us. So we were able to get funding for social care that I think we'd had major difficulties for if we wouldn't have had that. The other bit as well is also that we've aligned our strategies so that we're very clear in terms of we're focusing on what the residents of the borough want. And it's not just from the hospice point of view, we still look at the end of life. But what we're not doing is duplicating stuff around carers. That dovetails in what Sally and her teams are doing. The education services. So what we've done is not just reduce duplication, but identify where there's gaps and actually put funding bids in and developed new services to fill those gaps right across the whole range of services.
And I think for just the fact that we're working together strategically and all the reasons Steve said, that absolutely improves the end user experience. So residents experience far better coordinated services, a far better service, There's a better range, there's better geographical spread. So I think for the end user, the partnership's been really critical.
Yeah, we know a lot more about each other's services, so although there's cross referrals going on, but we are also aware that those referrals are much more appropriate now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a lot of hard work. Steve mentioned earlier, it's on top of the day job, so we're all running our own organisations, and it does take time and commitment, but it does pay dividends once you put that time in.
In terms of the change that's going on in the NHS at the moment, it's really helped us position ourselves with the local health economy. In Hillingdon, we started the journey around integration 6 years ago, and if we didn't have the partnership, we wouldn't be sitting around the table as a group of 5 organisations. And out of that, it's really provided a huge amount of opportunities. We've had to be very proactive. We haven't, I would say that, I say where we differ from other areas, because we do talk to people from other areas, is that we've been proactive in terms of identifying where the gaps are. Because we're part of the local health and care partnership, we have information about what services are working, which services are not working. And we've been able to actually develop business cases and put funding applications in. And to be honest, we've done it actually a bit smarter than the local NHS organisations have done it, because we're a bit more sort of focused around that side of things. So in this current year, we've in Hillingdon there's 2.1 million invested in new services, and the third sector we got just short of £1 million worth of that, which we wouldn't have done if we hadn't been working in partnership.
I think it's been about us being able to identify the sort of pains that the NHS is going through. So we all know that the NHS is under huge pressure, and what we've been able to do is present solutions to the NHS for some of the problems they have, and we've long advocated the need for moving away from a focus on illness and a medical condition, but the services we offer really start to address wider determinants of health, so supporting residents with all those social issues that can have a huge impact on their health and well-being, on their usage of health and social care services. And we've been able to demonstrate that we can save money by promoting more effective usage of those services.
From a staff point of view, it's been interesting because we started very much as a senior management team working on this to start off with. As we started to get funding, or started to look at funding bits together, we started to bring sort of middle management into some of our services, some of the frontline service users. And it's been quite interesting how they at first were quite concerned about merger, about what's going to happen to their jobs, etc. And what we have done over time is we've included them in the planning we've been doing, etc. And what's also come out of this is the opportunity to do things differently. Because the funding that we've got to run, we've got a sort of an odd hybrid around Edge for All, which is the joint charity that we've got. But because we now got over £1 million worth of contracts in there, that's created job opportunities that staff wouldn't have alternative opportunities to do that. And all of those staff are currently seconded from the 5 partner organisations, which means some staff who've actually have had opportunities to do something different. And then we've had new staff coming in, and we've got the ability to, we do move staff across boundaries of organisations.
And we have shared staff. I mean, the staff team's very, very fluid, and as Steve mentioned, the progression's great. I think the initial concern was that identity and that kind of local reputation. But at the point of delivery for local residents, our 5 charities still maintain their own services. So at the point of delivery, it's still Age UK or the Hospice or the Hillingdon Carers. But the fluidity is sort of behind the scenes, really, and that gives us so much more flexibility in terms of meeting health needs in its broadest sense, really.
Yeah. One of the questions a lot of people ask us is, who decides who does what? And
Steve does, and we just do.
What we have done is we've developed over the time. We've actually started to look at where we work collectively, and we have a written constitution which we actually fall back to in terms of there are certain things It is a bit like the EU, which is probably not the best thing to be raising at this point in time.
More effective.
But we have certain things that we have to have unanimous decision on. Some stuff we can do it by majority. And we have an agreement that if 2 partners want to use the brand, as long as there's 2 partners want to use it, it doesn't have to be all partners involved in it as well. And it just means that because we've developed the strategies and thinking around it, we've actually mapped out who does what anywhere. And if there's something new comes up, we will discuss who's the best partner to take it forward, or best partnership within the partnership as well. And the other thing that's happening now as well, the team that we've got operating, that's been running the longest, which is our health and wellbeing team, they are actually developing their own identity as well. So it's things are moving forward.
And in terms of governance, we have a board of trustees like any charity, but there's 2 representatives from each of the 5 sovereign charities, so that's equitable. And the joint venture agreement very, very clearly lays out what decisions that board can make on behalf of the new organisation and what decisions have to be taken back to the 5 sovereign boards. So we've got a very clear remit in terms of some of the major decision making, but the executive also meets twice a week. Twice a month. It feels like twice a week, to make the sort of operational type decisions.
Yeah. I mean, we've had some challenges in that time in terms of there are things like we have to be careful that all of our brands are now linked together.
Yeah.
So due diligence is something that we have to do on each other on a regular basis, and that gets a bit challenging when you've got used to working with somebody really closely, and then you start probing into what's the financial position of your organisation, how you're actually managing around safeguarding issues, etc. like that. So I think that's the sort of areas where we've had the biggest challenges.
Well, we don't have any jurisdiction, do we?
No.
We just have, the commitment to working together, but actually challenging a colleague and saying, we've heard this, or we're not sure that you've dealt with that very well, or are your finances stacking up, is a very, very difficult conversation to have. However, we've got through it and we're still here. We've also weathered the change of 2 chief execs out of the 5. For me, partnerships is usually always about people. And Steve and I work really, really well together. But you develop that trust, as Steve said at the beginning. And when you have that change of personnel at a senior level, you're kind of rediscovering all of that and having to reinstate some of the sort of things that were taken for granted. But we've weathered the change of 2 chief execs.
Yeah, we did have one of our partners have some financial difficulties, which actually we all rallied around to help, and that was really, really useful. But that's again about, and the other thing is you get feedback, honest feedback from people who know you, because the sector's very good at actually talking about you behind your back. And so actually what happens is we've got lots of ears out there, pick up things, and that gets back to you so you can do stuff without having to... that's a sort of an advantage we hadn't thought of at the time, but it's actually very useful.
And just in terms of being one of the partners, the carers lead, just thinking about the benefits to our services from working jointly with the hospice, we've kind of made carers everybody's business now, so we have improved cross-referral from all our partners. Steve actually does lots of our carer training and carer support, so we have joint services. There's more support for the people that those carers are looking after through our wellbeing services, but there's also more support for carers that are living with their own health conditions, their own long-term conditions. We talked about our seat on the local accountable care partnership. That's given us improved access to primary care and to senior commissioners in health, because we were very council facing. But that's actually meant primary care now have carer champions in 37 of our 43 practices, which has been great. And the shared resources, so we share rooms, we share training, we throw all of that open to staff. And we've improved success at bidding for resources because funders do like partnerships, and I think, touch wood, we've not actually been knocked back for any funding at the moment because they like the fact that we're working so closely together. So in the whole, it's raised the profile of Hillingdon on the national stage, it's raised our carer work on the national stage, and really improved organisational credibility with sort of senior managers. think that was probably the same for the other partners.
I think that's
about the hospice.
for all of us, 'cause from the hospice point of view as well, as we get in referrals a bit earlier. People know about us. We're breaking down some of that barrier in terms of the hospice, because our brand is seen alongside the other 5 partner organisations, and the HFOL brand itself as well, our wellbeing service particularly, because they're actually picking up and people while they're still well, but are actually identifying that if there's issues coming up, particularly where there's a carer situation, you've got a mutual carer situation where one person's health is deteriorating faster than the rest. Those are sort of things. So in terms of, as Sally was saying, I think that whole improvement of support and access to services has had a major effect across all of us.
Yeah. So it's been hard work, but absolutely worth it, and I would highly recommend. You know, I can't imagine working in any other way now. It would be very odd not to be part of the partnership and to be thinking about the impact on 5 organisations rather than on one.
In terms of sort of prompts and some advice that we'd probably give other people is really think through why you're doing it. Don't just do it for the sake of doing it, because if it's not actually got some real basis in fact. Also think about the wider context. Don't just think about your organisation, think about the community you're supporting and how you can add extra value around that. And be very practical about it. Also, we did a lot of work at the beginning to talk about if things went wrong, what would we do? So we've got all of those things in place. So it's not the usual stuff around partnership stuff. But the other bit is actually be a bit more ambitious about it, more proactive. What we found is by knocking on people's doors, by thinking about these sort of things, and actually going out there and talking to people, we've actually made a big difference. I mean, we've been working very closely in Hillingdon, London Borough of Hillingdon, for the last 6 years. But with the move, particularly health sector, to the new integrated care systems, the SDP levels, we now actually, in the last, we tried a couple of years ago, but we now have got the situation, we're now talking to partners across the SDP areas to look at how we can work at a strategic level to influence decisions, not just about delivering services, but helping to influencing tenders and decisions about shapings of services. Because what we've learned is that the NHS are very good at actually repeating what they've done before. Yeah. But if you come to it from a third sector point of view, and you've got very much from a resident's point of view, we've got a lot to add to that thinking and those shaping of services. Right, I think that's it from us. I hope you find that useful, and I understand Elizabeth will be there to actually answer any questions that she might be able to answer for me. She has an idea of what we're doing, and good luck to anybody who's actually thinking about setting up a partnership.
And please feel free to give us a ring or drop us an email if you want any advice or help. Thank you.